It really is surprising how much beauty you will find in the Valley of Death. Death Valley National Park is located a 4-hour drive from Los Angeles and a 2.5-hour drive from Las Vegas. The first thing you want to do when you enter Death Valley National Park is go to Furnace Creek and visit the Visitor Center and pay your entrance fee. At the Visitor Center there is a good amount of inspiration for landscape photography in Death Valley, and you will also get a map so you can easily find around in the national park. In Death Valley there's 2 main towns. One is called Stovepipe Wells and the other is Furnace Creek, where the visitor center is located. They are both located relatively in the middle of the park, yet there is still a 40 kilometers drive between them. Obviously, because it's a desert, Death Valley can become very hot. It can actually become one of the hottest and driest places on the entire Earth. For that reason, high season in Death Valley is actually in the winter time. The first location we visited is called Artist Drive, which leads to Artist Palette. This area is known for its colors caused by oxidation of different metals on the face of the Black Mountains. You should try and visit this location after a rainfall. When the minerals are wet, the colors shine way more. It's the same effect as when you find a beautiful wet stone at the beach, but when you come home and the stone is dry, the colors have turned all flat and boring. If you can combine a rainfall with the beautiful colors of a sunset, you are in for a treat. Visiting this place during the midday harsh daylight does not give justice to this location, as we found out, but it is still immensely beautiful. If you continue the road down south from Furnace Creek and Artist Drive, you will come to the Devil's Golf Course. The Devil's Golf Course is one of the most rough and fascinating locations I have ever visited in my travels. What you find here is salt formations, and they're very hard, almost petrified hard, so you have to be extremely careful with where you put your feet. If you fall over, you will likely be pierced by one of the pointy salt spikes, not to mention what would happen to your lens if it falls front first. It is hard to photograph here, and I didn't get any compelling pictures. I did prioritize other locations above this, but I would just put it in here and mention it that it's definitely worth a visit and also worth trying to take some pictures here. When you continue the road down south from the Devil's Golf Course, you will come to Badwater Basin, which are a huge amount of salt flats, which is just super fascinating. It is, along with the Devil's Golf Course, one of the most fascinating places I've ever visited. When you park the car at the parking lot, you will have to walk for around 20 to 30 minutes to get to the best parts of the salt flats, where the hexagonal salt shapes are most visible. If you can't find them immediately, just keep walking. They only get better and better. Depending on the time of year, Badwater Basin will change looks. When we visited in the end of November and start December, the flats were all dry and mainly white, but I've seen pictures and videos from other seasons where the salt flats were covered in a thin layer of water. This often happens after a strong rainfall. And it should go without saying that you don't drive your car onto the salt flats. Just don't do it, it's so stupid. My main goal for photographing Badwater Basin was actually some nightscape photography. It was the days around New Moon we spent in Death Valley, so the conditions were pretty good since Death Valley is also a dark sky park. I shot a good amount of foregrounds during sunset and sunrise, and when darkness came and the Milky Way became visible, I got some amazing photographs of our galaxy. Sadly, the position and the direction of the Milky Way at this time of year didn't make for a compelling image at that particular location. So I shot the foregrounds and the Milky Way separate and made a series of composite night images instead. The entire area feels so otherworldly and the shapes looks like something out of a science fiction novel. Badwater Basin also looks absolutely phenomenal during the golden hour and blue hour, where the sky lights up in different colors. Try to find different shapes which can work as foregrounds and lead your eye into the picture. Something I missed myself while I visited Badwater Basin and the Devil's Golf Course was to bring a macro lens or some macro rings. If you bring those, you can get some beautiful close-ups of the salt formations and salt crystals. The amazing shapes in Badwater Basin also invites to abstract photography with all the amazing textures. With a combination of the 10-second timer and the tripod as an extension of my arm, I could photograph straight down from a high angle and get the beautiful textures of the salt flats. Zabriskie Point is the most famous landscape photography location in Death Valley. It's located fairly close to Furnace Creek and there's both a huge parking lot and a big vantage point. Most photographers prefer to get down and out in front of the vantage point as to not get tourists and other photographers in their photographs. Zabriskie Point is always beautiful and always worth a visit, but as with many locations, it's doing very well in the golden hour. We visited Zabriskie Point both during night and in the golden hour. The sunrise was definitely the best time since we got beautiful colors in the sky just before the sun rose and the location got lit up by the sun when it came above the horizon. In regard to the lens, you'll definitely benefit the most from a good zoom lens. A 70-200 covers most, but do not forget your kit lens either. If you continue further up for around 20 miles from Zabriskie Point, you will come to Dante's View. Dante's view is one of the best viewpoints in the valley if you're interested in getting up high. There's a hiking trail up there, but since it was biting cold while we were there, we decided only to focus on getting a few beautiful abstract photos of Badwater Basin below us. Unless you're going for a big wide panorama of the valley, the 70 to 200mm lens is your best choice here too. The Mesquite sand dunes are a central attraction of Death Valley and the main reason I wanted to visit this national park. These dunes are located only a few kilometers outside of Stovepipe Wells. There's a rather big parking lot and some boards with important information. Mesquite sand dunes are not the only dunes in Death Valley, but they're definitely the most accessible, since you will need a 4x4 and special wheels to get out into the other dunes. If you come a day with wind, where the sand is blown around and hits sunset or sunrise, the beautiful golden light will set the dunes ablaze, and you'll get some absolutely spectacular shots. I can highly recommend you to check out some of the photographs from Michael Shaneblum or Alex Noriega. Also, all the tourist footprints will be washed away and you get nice and clean dunes. The further you get away from the parking lot, the less footprints you will see. The east and northeast part of the dunes are really great for landscape photography. After the sun has set behind the mountains, but before sunset, the sky turns into one huge softbox, which lights up the dunes with a soft yet contrasty light. It looks very special and I consider it to be the best light we got while photographing the dunes, since we didn't have much wind during sunset or sunrise. When it comes to the practical stuff, come in good time to scout for some proper compositions. I'd suggest at least 3 hours before sunset. Remember to bring a lot of water and food. When you're far into the dunes, you don't just walk back to the car. And definitely bring a headlamp, which in general is an absolute must in your landscape photography kit. The wider range of focal length you can get, the better. I'd suggest something in the range of 28 to 300mm. If the wind blows the sand and dust around, I would suggest not starting to change your lenses, because the dust and sand which gets into the camera is not a good idea. So you might want to bring 2 cameras with 2 different lenses on. Also make sure that your cameras are actually weather sealed and sealed against dust and sand. You should also bring your lens hood not just to cover from lens flares, but also to cover the front element from sand and dust. I also tried to get a few pictures of the dunes and the night sky, but a few clouds were in the way and I realized rather fast that finding a composition in the pitch black darkness was next to nearly impossible. It was actually at this point I decided to solve the problem by compositing different pictures together, even though I've had the idea for long. Other places I would have loved to visit in Death Valley in regard to landscape photography is the racetrack playa, where big stones leave tracks in the ground after their movement. I would also have loved to visit Eureka Dunes, which is the tallest dunes in Death Valley. Besides these places, there are a lot of other smaller locations which are worth checking out, but not known for landscape photography. Death Valley National Park is an insanely surprisingly beautiful place, and it comes highly recommended from my side. I did not expect much of Death Valley from my research, but it really was the place which surprised the most on our entire US trip. We even decided to spend one extra day in the park just to get another sunset and sunrise. Thanks again so much for watching. If you want to buy any of the prints, there's a link below to my Society 6 account. I would also highly appreciate a like, and you can subscribe to the channel if you want to follow on even more. It would be a huge help for me if you would want to share this video or any of my other videos in relevant photography forums on Facebook or Reddit or wherever it makes sense. In the next episode we are going to another fantastic and very fascinating location, which is Bryce Canyon.